Welcome to NBA Live Before Lock right here on Awesemo.com as we get you ready for today's 4-game slate of playoff action. Game 4's coming up here. Of course, starts up in 1 hour with the Bucks and the Magic. Then we got Rockets, Thunder, Pacers here. Then cap it off with Lakers and the Blazers. Adam, man, how you doing on this Monday afternoon, man?
Doing good. Looking forward to what might be the final 4-game NBA slate of the season.
Yeah, it's, as I look at all these games, I can speak as a Magic fan. This series is so reminiscent of last year against the Raptors, taking game 1 and then, the thing about the Magic in that game, and I think it's in terms of a DFS angle, is do the Bucks get up so big that guys like Giannis and Middleton don't maybe get the minutes that we think they're going to get?
That's always the concern, but Josh and I kind of talked about it this morning too. Even in the game that Milwaukee lost, Bud's rotation was so much like a regular season rotation that it's not like you're projecting Giannis for 40 minutes and then if the game blows out, you're only getting 30. If the game's close, at least based on what we saw in game 1, you still got like 34 minutes from Giannis. So I guess that's kind of the silver lining there, is that even if the game does blow out, you're probably only losing a couple of minutes. Plus, if the game blows out, it's probably because Giannis just scored 60 fantasy points in 3 quarters.
Yeah, of course. We are sponsored by SuperDraft. We'll tell you about what SuperDraft's got going on today. Some of those great plays that we see on SuperDraft. But in terms of, I know you and Josh were really talking about roster construction. In terms of Vucevic in this spot, he is priced up in this spot. Clearly he is the one player the Bucks have struggled with this entire series. But now the pricing is starting to come up of how do you put them in a lineup of, whether you're going with a balanced lineup or a stars and scrubs type approach?
It's going to be tough just from a roster construction standpoint because, you mentioned it. He's the one guy that Milwaukee doesn't really have an answer for. So from that standpoint, I think he's a good play. Like it's obvious, the offense is running through him. He has about a 34% usage rate in the playoff games. He's had success against Lopez throughout his career, regardless of where Lopez is. And, everything makes sense for Vooch to be difficult for Milwaukee to slow down. The problem you're just going to run into is kind of twofold. For one, there's a lack of value on this slate as far as guys that you have any sort of confidence in doing well. So it makes it a little bit tougher to go with a stars and scrubs approach. But also Vooch is expensive enough where, he's 9,100 on DraftKings. You can roster him, but it's not going to be that tough. Like you're basically going to end up sacrificing one player to say, okay, well, actually I'm going to go Anthony Davis instead for I think 10-5 or 10-6. And so Vooch is expensive enough to where, if you're able to get to Vooch, it's probably not going to be that much harder to get to like an Anthony Davis. So it's going to be tough there. And that should keep the ownership down. Right now we have him projected for about 18% ownership on DraftKings, which is a little higher than I expected. If it comes down closer to like 10%, I think that's where I'd start to get a little bit more interested, because I do think you're kind of making a sacrifice in terms of roster construction to get to him. So with him getting a fair amount of ownership right now, I'm less likely to go there than if that drops.
I mean, at the center spot on SuperDraft, he's 1.25 times. I mean, the next highest you go is Hassan Whiteside at 1.35 times. I feel like on SuperDraft, he's kind of a better fit than the other platforms.
Yeah, no question. I mean, like getting almost the same multiplier on Vooch as on Whiteside is a pretty clear call for Vooch.
Yeah, I mean, looking at our ownership projections, Markelle Fultz, we've got it as the second highest right now in DraftKings. This is the thing about Markelle Fultz is, and I think you can say this about several of these Magic players. I think you can put Terrence Ross in this mix. You can put Evan Fournier in this mix of how much can you trust them? You can't. You can't. I mean, the thing with the Magic players and why I'll still get to them today, even though you can't trust them, is that, like I said before, the value on this slate is so difficult to come by. If you're not going to go to the Orlando plays, if you're just saying, screw it, they're going to get blown, whatever your reason is, what are your alternatives down there? Like you're going to Jay Crowder, you're going to go to Andre Iguodala. Like there's nothing that you're going to really feel good about. There's no pivot off of Orlando. Like I think that the Magic guys still have the most appealing range of outcomes out of these cheap plays, and that's why they're still getting ownership. That's why I think they deserve ownership. That being said, Markelle Fultz is projected for 32% ownership right now. I know in higher stake stuff last game he was north of 50% owned.
it's not that he's not that much better than the other options. You can still pivot away from these guys because it's so easy for them to fail. But I just think that they, as a whole, Fultz, Augustine, to a lesser extent, Ross and Clark and Ennis, they're like the one team that the price didn't really move up today, whereas it did for most other teams.
When we look at the other side, on the Milwaukee side of things, obviously everyone's going to look at Giannis. His ownership's going to be high. Chris Middleton 2 games ago had an awful game, had a nice bounce back game. In game 3, what is there a value play you like there on that Bucks lineup?
Not really a value play, because I think that their production is so condensed to, Giannis obviously, and then Middleton, Bledsoe, and to a lesser extent Lopez. If you're playing 150 lineups, I can see taking some shots on like a George Hill, just hoping that he plays 24 minutes instead of 20, and he's really inexpensive. But their value guys kind of just don't play enough minutes and aren't useful enough for me to really get to them outside of, maybe taking some shots at Hill. But if you are either not paying all the way up, or if you're deciding to go to like Harden or one of the Lakers over Giannis, I do think the pricing on Lopez and Bledsoe in particular is still pretty favorable from an upside standpoint. Their median projections are pretty much in line with their salaries. Like, I think the pricing is correct in that regard, but there is still plenty of room for Bledsoe and Lopez to beat those price points in tournaments if you're going with a little bit different build that doesn't involve Giannis.
Yeah, I know. Just looking in the YouTube chat, obviously a lot of people are talking about DJ Augustine in this spot as instead of Markelle Fultz, because I think that you feel confident, and I think he runs the Magic offense a lot better. And I think what we've seen from the Bucks in this series is like they're just telling Markelle Fultz, just shoot the ball. We're going to give you that open 3 if you want to take it, but we both know he's not going to make it.
Right, and that's kind of what Josh and I were talking about this morning as far as Evan Fournier goes, like excluding Vooch because they don't really have an answer for him. But Fournier is the next guy on that team where the Bucks look at it and say, like, this guy is actually, he's good, he's capable of beating us. So they're not letting Fournier get these shots off. They would much rather it go to anyone else, including Fultz, who is, I think, a 28% 3-point shooter this year. So the opportunity is going to be there for him, but it's unlikely that he shoots really well. Mentioning Augustine, though, I do like him because while he, the minutes are similar to Fultz, he's played a little bit less, but he's been really involved as a playmaker. The assist percentage is really high for him. So far in the 3 playoff games, he's averaged 26 minutes per game. He's averaged 12.7 potential assists per game. Fultz is at 12. So, obviously both of those guys should be picking up enough assists to increase their floor a little bit. Augustine just kind of the more efficient player overall. So I've given him a little bit of an edge, since you're assuming that, based on the first 3 games, Fultz isn't likely to play significantly more minutes.
Evan Fournier has been a guy that has been highly owned. But I know you talked about this earlier on the strategy show, is like Milwaukee has basically made it known we're going to stop Evan Fournier. We're not going to let him do anything. Any shares of Fournier today?
I mean, out of 150 lineups, I would assume I have some, but not. He's my least favorite out of Fultz, Augustine, and Ross, and himself. Mm-hmm. Just because of what you said. There's always a tendency for there to be recency bias when you get into like the playoffs and you have the same matchup over and over again. But it's important to kind of notice what is actual, like what it's real and what is just poor shooting or whatever. In Fournier's case, the Bucks are taking those away. Like, his usage has basically been non-existent through these 3 games. In the first 3 games, his usage rates have been 13.1, 19, and 19.9%. And so obviously, he's getting some shots up. He got up 10 last game, 13 the game before that. But you're talking about someone that, if you look at his rates for the season without Gordon and in games where Vooch and Fultz have played, he's like a 24-25% usage guy. So if you're just projecting him like everything's the same, he will just grade out as a great value, and you're going to kind of just keep banging your head against the wall when he doesn't get as many shots as you're expecting. So I think that it is reasonable, and you probably should be lowering his rates here because of what Milwaukee's doing. He's still cheap enough where he certainly can pay it off. He hasn't shot well. Like game 2, he shot 4 for 13 from the field, 1 for 6 from 3. If Fournier shoots well there, he's still paying off a $5,300 price tag. It's just the probability of him doing so is lower than it normally would be because of how the Bucks are playing.
Someone mentioned in the chat, are you going to trust Chris Middleton today in this spot?
I don't think I'll get to a lot of Middleton just because of the price point. obviously he's takes a backseat to Giannis. That's obvious. But we did see more usage last game, which was good. He was up 29.4%. But the thing is that his price tag, like, he's still coming in more expensive than Malcolm Brogdon. He's about the same price as Jimmy Butler. He's more expensive than Bam. He's more expensive than CJ McCollum. It's a really deep price point. And so I think it'll be tough for me to get there for that reason. It's, just so much has to go his way for him to really put up a monster game at that price point. The game has to stay close. Giannis has to not be doing everything. And then you also have, Bledsoe has to not take over, and Lopez has to be the one that doesn't take over. So I think there's just kind of less value at Middleton's price point for him than there is for any of Giannis, Bledsoe, or Lopez.
When we look at this Rockets and Thunder game, it seems like every game in this playoff, Chris Paul has been like the guy that I've gone with in multiple shares in every game. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, another one that's done well. I mean, of course, on the Rockets, we all know James Harden. What's kind of, what are you targeting in this matchup?
Yeah, kind of just interchangeable guards, in my opinion. As far as when you factor in salary, like Paul's the guy that you clearly like the most, then SGA, then Dennis Schroeder, but they're priced in that order as well. Paul's getting about 17% ownership right now. Gilgeous-Alexander's at 11%, and Schroeder's at 15%. So I think the ownerships are about where they should be. I'll probably just kind of be mixing and matching them in because they're all going to play. Gilgeous-Alexander played about 42 minutes last game. I have Paul projected for 37 or 38. I have Gilgeous-Alexander around 40, and I have Schroeder around 34. So they all come in, pretty similarly relative to their salaries. I'm limiting it to a maximum of 2 per lineup, but kind of just mixing and matching through them. Like, whatever fits in the lineup that I'm building, I like all 3 guys.
Someone had mentioned Jeff Green in the chat a minute ago. I want to say, I forget who they were asking. It was Jeff Green and somebody else, but obviously Jeff Green is, I know you guys were talking about it earlier. Maybe just took him too long to get to Houston where he really needed to be.
Yeah, I mean, he's playing really well. He's getting the minutes. We've seen him all 3 games really get minutes over Robert Covington. There's always some risk there just because the Rockets do have so many interchangeable pieces. There's no guarantee that the rotation looks exactly the same as it has. But I thought it was really good to see also Green handling the ball a lot last game, especially when Harden was off the floor. You were getting some point Jeff Green. That makes him more valuable as well. And I'm treating it more or less like the first 3 games. I have him in for 34 minutes. I think that he's a pretty decent play. The price tag's come up enough to where he's not, I wouldn't expect him to be in like the majority of my lineups or anything, but I still think that at 5,400 on DraftKings, if you're expecting around 34 minutes from him and he's only 9% owned, he's still going to get into some lineups. Like, for example, right now we have the same ownership on $5,400 Jeff Green and $4,200 PJ Tucker. I think that from a medium projection standpoint, they're going to come out pretty similarly, but the upside is just so much higher for Green. He's such a more volatile player than PJ Tucker is.
Yeah, so someone mentioned in chat, it was either Jeff Green or Hassan Whiteside.
Yeah, I mean, I think Whiteside's going to have the better projection, but I honestly think the ceiling is higher for I guess I shouldn't say the ceiling. The chance of Green having a big game, I think, is higher than Whiteside. Obviously, if Nurkic gets in foul trouble or something, Whiteside can go off. But even though Whiteside's getting more minutes now, his production is going to be capped somewhat by losing rebounds to Nurkic, by losing usage to Nurkic, and then obviously to Lillard and McCollum. So I think that, like, in cash, because of the ownership and the point per dollar projection, you probably should take the savings to Whiteside. But when you factor in the ownership and the fact that Green has the easier path to just having a monster game, I actually like Green quite a bit in tournaments.
Norris Knoll has been obviously someone that's been a topic of conversation, for the Thunder here. And some of our watchers were asking your take on him.
I'm pretty concerned about him here because I think there's more of a chance that OKC goes small in this game than there has been in any of the prior 3 games. Mm-hmm. We saw them have to do it basically in overtime last game because Steven Adams was injured, and they went on an immediate 11 or 12-0 run, killed the Rockets in overtime. I think maybe you see more of that, not to mention the only person who was able to really slow down James Harden last game was Lou Dort. You know that you're getting a bunch of minutes from Gilgeous-Alexander, Paul, Gallinari, and Schroeder. So it's basically, do they go small and take Dort off the floor, or do they give Dort more run? Or sorry, do they go big and take Dort off the floor for more minutes, or do they go smaller, give Dort more run, play Gallo at the 5, and that takes minutes away from Adams and Noel? I think there's pretty legitimate risk of that happening. We only saw Noel play 13 minutes last game anyway, so really the only endorsement I can give to Noel is if you are 150 maxing a tournament, he's cheap. All the value on this slate has legitimate issues, no exception for Noel, but it's not like Noel has a drastically different range of outcomes from like an Andre Iguodala or something like that. So, maybe getting him a little bit there, but outside of that, it's really tough for me to trust his minutes in this matchup.
Yeah, I mean, Steven Adams, we mentioned about the injury. Haven't seen anything, announced by the Thunder, quite yet. I mean, game time decision seems to be what we're kind of hearing now. If for some reason Steven Adams doesn't go, does Noel become a more intriguing option?
Yeah, for sure. Because at that point, even if Adams doesn't go, I still think I think you just see a lot of small ball from OKC. Like I think you see more Muscala. I think you just see more Gallo at the 5 and more of the wings. But Noel's so cheap that even if you take him from a 14-minute projection to a 20-minute projection, he's going to come in as a good value. So if Adams were to be ruled out, then I'll be swapping to a lot of Noel.
In terms of anything else stick out to you on either one of these teams of, maybe it's a surprise ownership that you're seeing?
Josh and I talked about it this morning, and it's not like a ringing endorsement, like this is a high probability thing. But if 4K Lou Dort is going to be 4% owned on this slate where all the value has legitimate question marks, I'm definitely taking some shots at him. The Rockets are daring him to shoot. He's not good at shooting. Like he's out, but he should, if he can stay out of foul trouble, he should be on the floor a lot to defend James Harden. Did a really good job of it last game. I would expect them to try and get more of that out of him. And the Rockets are just not defending him at the 3-point line. He's taking the shots. He's not making them. But when you talk about if you can get 34, 35 minutes from him, if he happens to knock down a few wide open threes, he's probably going to give you a pretty good score. And obviously that's a big if, but it's the same thing for KCP. It's the same thing for Danny Green. Andre Iguodala is getting like 4% usage in the playoffs. So all these guys have such legitimate question marks that I don't really think any one of them should be this much lower owned than the rest, like Dort is.
Do you like Daniel House Jr. at 5,000 on DK?
Yeah, I think he's fine. I mean, he'll fit some lineups just because he's Ford eligible and he's relatively inexpensive. I expect 34 to 36 minutes from him. Obviously, he's not going to be a really high usage guy, but you're just hoping for a similar stat line to what you got last game where he runs into 10 or 11 rebounds. He knocks down some shots, gets you like 12, 13 points and puts up a baby double-double.
Of course, we are sponsored by SuperDraft, where you can use their multipliers. You don't have to worry about salaries. You can put exactly who you want in your lineup. Use the promo code Awesemo10, and it's $10 free on your first deposit of $10 or more, $20 total free on your first deposit of $100 or more. Of course, you can download the app in the App Store or play at superdraft.io. SuperDraft, no limits, more winning. And when you look at this Pacer game, you could take Malcolm Brogdon at 1.55 times on SuperDraft. You can also look at someone like a Jimmy Butler as well. I do like that 1.55 times multiplier on Malcolm Brogdon.
Yeah, no question. He's one of the best plays even on the site, at the salary sites today. So getting him at that multiplier on SuperDraft is great.
Someone had asked mentioned about Brogdon, saying Brogdon or Butler on FanDuel.
Both are, I think, really good plays. Whichever is cheaper would be the preference.
Yeah, when you look at Brogdon on FanDuel, he is 7,600. And then, of course, when it comes to Jimmy Butler, he is 8,500 on FanDuel.
Yeah, so I lean toward Brogdon there.
In terms of this Heat and Pacers matchup, of course, potential closeout game here for the Heat, already up 3-0. What's kind of your take on some of the top performers you see in this one?
Yeah, I mean, you've seen Butler, obviously, but Butler and Dragic really just dominating usage in this series. It's taken some usage away from Bam Adebayo, who has played really, really well, just not as great from a DFS standpoint. So you're seeing a lot of the usage go there. It's also important to keep in mind with Bam that he did deal with some foul trouble in, I believe it was game 2. So his DFS results are a little bit worse than you would expect going forward. I think those are the main 3 guys from Miami, Butler, Bam, and Dragic, obviously. But you're also going to get some ownership going to the value guys here. Jay Crowder, only 4,200 on DraftKings. Obviously legitimate concerns with his playing time because he's not really playing fourth quarters. He played, I think, 3 minutes in the fourth quarter last game. You're seeing Andre Iguodala close games over him. So you're only expecting 27 to 28 minutes from Jay Crowder, who is a low usage guy, and you're kind of just hoping, steal some rebounds from Bam or runs into some defensive stats. It's still not like it's a really high probability that he has a great game, but he does project as one of the better value plays. Andre Iguodala projects for around 6 times his salary on DraftKings. The problem is just that, how does he really outperform that? And he's projected for a lot of ownership right now. Typically during the regular season, he's someone that you can expect to get 12 to 15% usage. But with this being the playoffs and the ball being in Dragic's hands more, in Butler's hands more, you're seeing, I think 3, 8, and 9% usage, something along those lines in the first 3 games for Iguodala. So I think it's very, very likely that you're getting 28 mostly empty minutes from him. And with the ownership going there, I think it's a spot that I'm going to be just pivoting to other risky plays around him. But from just a strict median, point per dollar standpoint, he looks like a decent value as well. He's getting ownership for that reason.
Based on the questions, it seems like a lot of people are looking at this game. James says, any love for Justin Holiday?
Yeah, he's another one where the median projection is going to be fine because he started last game. You're expecting around 32 minutes from him. It's just how does he actually put up a score that you have to have in tournaments? And the reason I harp on that is because what happens on slates like this, where the pricing is pretty tight, is there's always 1 or 2 plays that for no real reason other than the pricing is tight and you need that salary in your lineup, get way more ownership than they should. I think that's the case with Iguodala. And also we have Justin Holiday coming in at 18% ownership right now. He's not he's going to play the minutes, but he's not getting shots. He's playing with Malcolm Brogdon, Victor Oladipo, and TJ Warren in a must-win playoff game. Justin Holiday's not getting shots. So it's just really hard to think that he goes out there and, puts up 30-something fantasy points. And with the ownership he's getting, I would just rather be going to some other guys that can just beat Justin Holiday, that project similarly a little bit worse and can beat him. The caveat there being, obviously, you have to look at everything in the context of your lineup. If you've already gotten a contrarian player or 2 in your lineup, then looking to someone like Holiday makes a lot more sense because his median projection is slightly higher than a lot of the guys priced around him.
In terms of Miles Turner, do you think his salary is a little undervalued?
I think his salary is, a little undervalued. He did play 38 minutes last game. If he can stay out of foul trouble, you should expect upper 30s again. Clearly he's going to take a backseat usage-wise to Warren, Oladipo, and Brogdon. But if he can, knock down some corner threes and pick up some blocks for you, he can have a pretty good game. And center's not a really deep position. So I would say I have him behind Brogdon, Oladipo, and Warren at their respective salaries. But, getting to him at low ownership in tournaments does make sense.
Are you joining the TJ Warren fan club?
No. I just have him in for a ton of minutes.
Yeah, man, you talk about a guy that's just the bubble life is going to make him a ton of money.
Yeah, he's kind of dropped off now that the playoffs have started, and you're seeing Oladipo take a lot more shots. But yeah, he is coming off. I guess, he's had 2 really big games against Miami. He was not good in game 2, but 38, and 40 minutes is the big thing there, especially because the forward positions aren't quite as strong. I have him projected as a solid play, probably not one that I get to a lot of because I think there's going to be better options.
In the final game of the night, someone was asking, and I know you and Josh talked about this earlier, but for people who did not have a chance to check that out, are you going to put LBJ and AD in the same lineup?
I'm not, because for a couple of reasons. For one, obviously, if you get that 60 plus fantasy point game from one of them, it's really unlikely that you get the other one also, without them just kind of running Portland off the floor. The Lakers are the superior team, and if you get a ceiling game from both Giannis or from both Davis and LeBron, it's pretty tough. But even more so than that, it's that there's Harden and because like last game they actually both did do really well. You got 68 from LeBron, 65 from Davis. But the thing is that with there being Harden and Giannis, and to a lesser extent Dame on this slate, I think it's not even so much that it's unlikely that James and Davis both do really well in the same game, but also for them to both be the highest scorers out of that group. I think it makes it a lot less likely. So for me, I would rather just go with one or the other, and then have, if I'm paying up for both spots, have a Giannis or a Harden instead.
Yeah, someone actually asked about putting Harden with one or the other. Which one would you prefer, LBJ or AD?
I have Davis a little ahead of LeBron just because he's a little bit cheaper. I think that he most likely plays an extra minute or two. And really, I mean, not that LeBron shouldn't, but really Davis should be able to do whatever he wants in this matchup. It's just a matter of if Davis decides to do that.
Yeah, especially if he gets that 3-point shot going down. I mean, it just seems like in this series, it's been there for him to take it, just whether or not he gets it. In terms of the Blazers side, obviously, what more can you say about what Dame has done, and obviously helping this team and, just that, essentially taking shots from half court. But what's your take on him tonight?
It's just really difficult to get to him at his price point because it's more expensive than LeBron and Davis. It's really close to Giannis. It's close to Harden. And, you're projecting more minutes for Lillard than for any of those guys. He played 43 minutes last game. I expect more of the same here, but he just doesn't produce at quite the same rate as them. And it obviously is a more difficult matchup for him going against the Lakers than, say, LeBron going against Portland. So, if you were a little bit cheaper, it would be more likely. I think his biggest role on the slate is if you have David or you have LeBron and you're going into the late game and your lineup's in trouble, switching or blocked, switching to Lillard, it gives you the same ceiling. It's just that he doesn't project quite well.
Do you like Nurkic at all?
Yeah, I think he's actually a pretty interesting tournament option because we've seen the minutes be down a little bit, but he's been in some foul trouble too. He picked up 3 fouls in the second quarter last game, only played 35 minutes. I think that the minutes could be higher. If you saw 38 to 40 minutes from him like you got in the play-in game, that wouldn't be surprising. He's also been really unproductive. The usage rate's been in the mid 16% range each of the last 2 games. So that's a concern as well. But the salary is coming down a little bit. And most importantly, the ownership's not there. It's just an example of we really don't know what to expect. The range of outcomes, I think, is really wide because we just don't have a sample size of him playing alongside Whiteside. We don't have a very big sample of him playing whatsoever in the last year. So the range of outcomes is really wide. And with the ownership and the salary coming down, I do think that it's a spot that is interesting in tournaments, especially on DraftKings, because you have power forward and center eligibility too.
Someone had asked about Alex Caruso and what's your take on him?
Yeah, the Lakers' value is I'm actually really interested in. Not that you're ever going to feel confident when you talk about Caruso or Danny Green or Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. But these guys are getting less ownership right now than, for example, Andre Iguodala or Justin Holiday. And I think their projections are very similar. Their salaries are very similar. The range of outcomes is really similar. And so I think that going to the lower owned guys there and you're just kind of hoping you hit on the right one is what I'll be doing. It's also clearly a favorable matchup for them against Portland. Caruso in particular, his potential assist numbers or his expected assist percentage, which I calculate based on projected or potential assist numbers, has been really high in this series. So you're seeing him with the ball, you're seeing assist opportunities. He's playing 26, 27 minutes. So I think Caruso out of the 3 would probably be the one I'm the most confident in, but I use that word, really loosely. It's basically I'm just, rotating through them in my lineups.
Hey, Michael, appreciate the tip there in the super chat. He says Brogdon, SGA, Gordon, Melo, Green, Butler, House, and Augustine.
I didn't hear anybody I disliked.
All right, so it's Brogdon, Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, Gordon, sure, Melo, Green, Butler, House.
Which Green?
And I would imagine that's Jeff Green.
Yeah, I'll say it doesn't really matter, actually.
And DJ Augustine.
Yeah, I like them all.
Over in the premium Slack account, a couple questions that we got. Nate says, can you compare the Lakers value to George Hill?
I have the Lakers value ahead of George Hill just because of minutes. I mean, George Hill, his median projection is 20 to 22 minutes. Maybe depending on game flow, you get 24, 25. Caldwell-Pope and Green should, assuming the game's competitive, should get at least 27, 28. Same goes for Caruso. They have the potential for more. I mean, Danny Green played 32 last game. So I think that, if George Hill were going to play 30 minutes and we knew that, then it would be Hill. But I think that there's the extra minutes for the Lakers guys makes it a little bit better for me.
Another question from Slack says, can you rank the studs on DraftKings?
I have it Harden, Giannis, LeBron. So in terms of projection, Harden, Giannis, LeBron, Davis, Lillard. So basically with the exception of Lillard in order of salary. I do, from a roster construction standpoint, prefer Davis to LeBron by a little bit.
Is there a difference on FanDuel in terms of how you rank them?
Let me see. I have Davis. I think Davis is the best on FanDuel because power forward's a really bad position, and he's only 10-9. LeBron, I think, is a better value than Giannis. Giannis does give you that really high ceiling on FanDuel because of the defensive stats. But I would say Davis, LeBron, Harden, Giannis.
By the way, if you're in the premium Slack, if you tag me, it's a good way. I'm definitely going to see it. Cameron Dixon, hey man, I appreciate there in the super chat. He goes, Gary Clark or Crowder on DraftKings?
I'd give the edge to Crowder. They're basically the same price point now. They're really similar. Crowder, the concern is that he's not getting fourth quarter run. And he basically just needs to knock down the open shots that he gets because he's not going to get that many of them. It's basically the same for Gary Clark. I mean, he's going to lose rebounds to Vooch. He's not a high usage guy. He basically just has to be efficient from three because the Bucks are going to let him take those shots. So I do have Crowder a couple points ahead of Clark, though.
Any issues with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Schroeder in the same lineup?
No, I just wouldn't want Paul in it also.
Okay.
Probably also wouldn't want Steven Adams in that particular lineup. The reason just being that for Schroeder to really hit his maximum ceiling, they need to at least play some small ball minutes.
Oladipo and Brogdon in the same lineup?
Yeah, I don't have an issue there because for one, they both get their usage anyway. For two, they're both underpriced, I think. I have it set not to have all three of Brogdon, Oladipo, and Warren. I think it's likely that two of them have a good game.
Also, we got best values 4K and below on DraftKings.
They all suck. I mean, like in all seriousness, whichever ones are the lowest owned, like if you like looking at the 4K and below values on DraftKings that project reasonably well, you have all right. So you have Dort. These guys are all going to be like between 17 and 20 points. Basically, like medium projections. Lou Dort, George Hill, Danny Green, Dwight Howard, KCP, Alex Caruso, Iguodala. Like these guys are all between 17 and 20 fantasy points. It's really just whichever ones the field wants to play, I'll just take the rest of the group.
There's been a lot of James Ennis questions. Unfortunately, I had him in one of my better lineups the other day. So when he got ejected, I was kind of like, son of a. But what's your thoughts on James Ennis today?
I think he's a pretty decent value. The rebounding numbers have been pretty good for him. Again, he's a low usage guy. You're hoping to get around 30 minutes from him. I think he's – I don't even want to say the word confident. I like James Ennis more than I like Justin Holiday, for example.
Yeah, man, it's that really screwed me the other day. When I saw them eject, I'm like, oh, come on. And then you find the guys on top of that. It's bad enough they got kicked out of a playoff game. And I think it was like 15,000 they got fined in that
15
game.
Each, I think.
Yeah, man. We touched on this a little earlier, but we'll mention it again. Just we got a question in Slack about it, about Fultz's massive ownership today.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's deserved as far as he has one of the more favorable range of outcomes for for a cheap play on this slate. Like when you're talking about similar price points for Markelle Fultz and DJ Augustine compared to like Justin Holiday or Jay Crowder or whoever else you want to pick from that price range. Clearly, Fultz has the higher ceiling. Augustine has the higher ceiling than guys like Justin Holiday. So I think the salary or the ownership is deserved. It's just that when you're talking about large field tournaments and you have to think in terms of probabilities and range of outcomes, there's still a really low floor for these guys. Like you're one game removed from 13 points from Markelle Fultz. So obviously the floor is non-existent. So it's really just within any given lineup. If you have made pivots to lower owned guys in the mid-range, then by all means play Fultz because he projects as one of the best values. But it's not like it's a must play because the range of outcomes, it's still so wide. And we haven't seen him getting huge minutes. It's not like Orlando's running him out there for 36, 37 minutes. We're pretty consistently seeing 28, 29, 30 minutes. So it's still relatively easy for him to disappoint.
Icon, appreciate the there in the super chat. It says, with it being Kobe Day for the Lakers, do you see LeBron having a game like Luka did last night for Kobe?
I do not. I do think LeBron's a good play, but not going a Luka route.
Of course, speaking of it being Mamba Day, be sure to get an Awesemo Plus weekly pass for $8.24 when you use the promo code Mamba at checkout. This offer does expire today, so you got to take advantage of that so you can get our ownership projections, the boom bust tool, player projections, so much more. So you can find out, as you've been hearing Adam talking about, who are some of the high end and who's some of the low end. So be sure to take advantage of this deal. It does expire today. We use the promo code Mamba at checkout for the Awesemo Plus weekly pass for $8.24. Garth, appreciate you in the super chat here. He says, I'm getting a lot of lineups with Gallinari and Steven Adams. Does this negatively correlate in your opinion?
It's not. I think it's fine. It's not like my favorite because, again, there is like Gallinari will have more productive minutes if he's playing center. And if he's playing center, obviously Adams isn't on the floor. So it's not the best, but they're also cheap enough where I'm not setting a rule against it.
You mentioned about players who are priced either virtually the same or the same, and Zach had asked about Jeff Green and Brook Lopez.
I give 5,200. Yeah, I give the edge to Jeff Green.
Markelle Fultz versus Bledsoe.
Bledsoe, if you can get there.
Do you like the price on Tyler Hero on DraftKings?
Not really. The minutes are nice. He should play low 30s, but he's still going to lose usage to Butler and Dragic, and he's just expensive enough where I think that I'd get to other guys.
Kyle's wondering about Melo or Kuzma on DraftKings.
I'd go Melo. He probably is going to play like 14 minutes more than Kuzma.
Zach says, thoughts on taking no one over 10K?
It's appealing in that it means you don't have to roster the god-awful value, but the problem is just how many guys there are above 10K and how good they are. Like, you're basically – it would be very, very surprising if none of Giannis, LeBron, Davis, and Harden score at least like 65 DraftKings points. It wouldn't be surprising if one of them goes for 75 or 80. And if that happens, it really doesn't matter. Like, there's going to be value plays that do well enough to fit them into your lineup. So it's still, I think, better to be getting to the expensive guys.
Dane in Slack says, pick your 44 small forward on FanDuel: Crowder, Holiday, or Ennis. Justin Holiday or James Ennis.
Yeah, I'd go Crowder, Ennis, Holiday in that order.
How many non-Harden Rockets are you comfortable having in the same lineup?
I have it capped at 3. I have it set to not get more than 2 of the Tucker, Green, House, whoever, Covington group. Eric Gordon I like a lot still.
Bledsoe and Dragic or Brogdon and Augustine?
Probably Brogdon, Augustine. That'll be the high. That's the higher owned one. Like, that's going to be the higher projection. Mm-hmm. I think the other one still has a high enough ceiling where it's a decent pivot in tournaments, but probability wise and medium projection wise, it's the Augustine one.
Johnny asked about teaming up LBJ with Adams or AD with Gordon.
I like Davis Gordon.
Jordan says, who's the biggest bust today?
Every player 4,500 and below on DraftKings. I mean, based on not that he's projected high, but based on our ownership projection, I think it's a good value.
Is today the massive James Harden game you think coming, or we could see an 80 point game from him in terms of DFS points?
Yeah, I think it's coming. Like, he took on a more aggressive role last game. He got up his most field goal attempts. He also had, I think, 15 free throw attempts. He fouled out of that game, so he lost an extra minute or two, not including lost I think an extra minute or two. I mean, I think it's coming. The OKC's done a decent job of keeping the ball out of his hands. Lou Dort did a really good job defending him last game. I think he was 3 for 14 on field goal attempts with Dort on him, but was getting to the line a ton. They were helping on Dort, even though they really didn't need to. And you kept seeing guys come in from off the ball and foul Harden and him get to the line. So yeah, I think that really the thing for me, the reason that I'm more interested in Harden today than I was the last couple of games is that his ownership has dropped. He's lower owned again than Giannis. He's lower owned. Actually, he's right now by a little bit. We have him projected to be the fourth highest owned out of the main four guys. And we just really haven't seen that ceiling game, but it's definitely there. I mean, he's missing a ton of shots that he can make. And OKC is a good enough team where, even if Harden is making his shots, they can still hang in this game. It's not very likely that it blows out.
Brandon asked, and this is just about roster construction, 2 studs in the same lineup today or more balanced?
I think probably more balanced. Like I'm still getting to some, Giannis, Davis, for example, you can still do it. But I think, especially if I were just like building 1 or 2 lineups, I'd be more likely to just go to the 1. I think if you're playing a bunch of lineups, it's easier to go to the 2 because you can mix and match value. There's enough value in terms of quantity that there's going to be good value plays today. It's just really, really difficult, I think, to nail them down in any one specific lineup. So my strategy will kind of change depending on how many lineups I'm playing.
Fantasy Wiz asks in Slack, who do we take at power forward on FanDuel outside of AD, Bam, and Green?
Let me pull up FanDuel. Outside of AD, Bam, and Green, taking a shot on Robert Covington's not the worst thing. I mean, he hasn't played more than 32 minutes yet, but power forward's really bad. You're kind of just hoping to run good on his minutes. Gary Clark at 4,400 is completely unappealing, but it's one of the better values. I mean, I think really I'd just be playing a ton of Davis and a ton of Bam. And a lot of Green.
Is Miles Turner viable on FanDuel today with Brogdon, Oladipo, and Warren taking up all the shots?
Viable, yeah. I would rather play 7K Nurkic. I'd rather play Vooch. I'd rather play Steven Adams, I think.
Green and Caruso or Clark and Iggy. By watching the strategy show, I definitely know you were kind of all in on Iggy.
Yeah, I'm not on Iggy.
Another one in the super chat says, should I build my lineup around a Heat late swap?
Around what?
A Heat late swap.
I don't know what that means.
I'm guessing meaning that he wants to put a bunch of Heat in his lineup, I'm guessing. That's what he meant by that.
Yeah, I mean, sure. Like the Heat are fine.
This is an SG2 question. Tyler Hero or Terrence Ross? I feel like Ross would be the upside. I mean, because if he starts, when he's just a streaky shooter. When he starts hitting those threes, I mean, all of a sudden he can hit 4 or 5 threes in a row, and those points go up big time.
Yeah, I would lean towards Ross.
Aaron says, do you have a rule set to not play Covington with Jeff Green?
To not play? No, I have it set for max 2 out of them. I think you could set that rule because typically Green is taking minutes from Covington, but they could. I mean, there's no reason they can't. Like House can't be the one to lose the minutes.
Mike, appreciate your tip there and donation. Talking about Saturday's MMA, yeah, did not do well on Saturday with the top 2 betting underdogs all winning. 15-1 betting underdog won, 7-1 betting underdog won. Yeah,
that slate was an absolute nightmare.
Oh God, man, it was awful. It was awful. I think it became. I forget what fight. I was like, yeah, all my lineups are done. I'm just gonna enjoy the fights. There's no reason even to look at my lineups there. Gallinari, I feel like is someone we really haven't touched on much.
Yeah, I mean he's a good play. It's just that the ceiling is capped. Like you so rarely see like actual big games out of him.
Any takers on Kendrick Nunn?
No.
Where? Bledsoe or Carmelo in a GPP on DraftKings?
Carmelo.
Who has the bigger ceiling, Oladipo or Eric Gordon?
I think they're pretty similar. I mean, they're both going to shoot a lot. They're both probably not going to make a lot.
Dort or KCP on FanDuel?
KCP.
Nate says, getting all three chalk heat guys in DraftKings cash lineup, is this okay?
Getting all three chalk heat guys? What?
Yeah, chalk heat guys.
Oh, chalk heat guys.
Yeah.
So that would be, I mean, I'm not on Iguodala, but so I guess it's Iguodala, Crowder, and Butler. Yeah, I mean, I don't want Crowder and Iguodala together.
Mm-hmm. Terrence Ross or Daniel House on DraftKings?
Ross.
Is that just more because of the upside?
Yeah, I think he has the higher ceiling.
I've got a couple of DraftKings single entry questions. I know one of them earlier was kind of like, who would you build your lineup around in a single entry?
I mean, that's a really, really vague question. I don't really have an answer.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you got to be is who's that top end guy that you feel most comfortable with taking. I mean, like for me, I think it would probably be James Harden.
I mean, yeah, but he's also the most expensive. Like it would probably be Davis is probably where I'd start, and then if I can get up to Harden, then I'd like to.
I mean, look, I like Vooch at 9,100, but I just think is how do you build your lineup around him? Just because I don't think the Bucks had defensively have much of an answer for him.
Right. Yeah, I love Vooch as far as what he can do to the Bucks. It's just really, really tough to get him into lineups, I think.
Apparently, Iggy's ownership is coming down a little bit.
Yeah, I think it's down to like 14% now, which is more in line with where it should be.
Schroeder or Eric Gordon on DraftKings?
Eric Gordon.
Someone mentioning Oladipo on SuperDraft, which let me pull up what his multiplier is on SuperDraft. 1.75 times on SuperDraft.
That's really good.
Yeah. They're in the donation here in the super chat, Gordon and Butler or Dragic and Shea, DraftKings cash. Also, LBJ or Harden.
LBJ in cash, and also Gordon and Brogdon?
Gordon and Butler or Dragic and Shea?
Yeah, Butler and Gordon.
Jonathan, appreciate there in super chat as well. He says, FanDuel, Miles Turner or late announced in Steven Adams?
Slightly prefer Adams.
Yeah, I just look at that and say hey, does Steven Adams play? I mean, I think that's got to be your biggest question mark.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest concern is, does he lose minutes? But I mean, he played 35 last game, so even if you're getting down around 30, you're fine.
What are you seeing right now in your crunches? Is there something that's really popping up for you a lot?
Nothing really unexpected. I'm a little behind on them, so I haven't gotten like a full one done. But
James asked, where's the upside with Adams?
I mean, the upside is that he gets some offensive rebounds or takes more than 4 shots. Because if he plays 30 plus minutes, he's getting double-digit rebounds. The upside is if, he took 13 shots in game 1. If you get back to that, he can give you a 15-15 line.
Outside of LBJ and AD, what else entices you on that Lakers offense?
The cheap guys, Green, Caruso, and Caldwell Pope.
They're just not a good offense.
They need someone that can knock down threes, and Danny Green is that guy, but he hasn't been that guy. So
I look at the Lakers like I look at the Denver Nuggets. They can really use a guy like JJ Redick.
Yeah, they definitely could.
Just to have it there. Bledsoe or Dragic, FanDuel, GPP?
I don't have the ownership in front of me, so if there's a big ownership difference, then Bledsoe, but otherwise I prefer Dragic.
Over in Slack, Dragic, Butler, and Iggy. That was what he was talking about with the Heat chalk question we had a little while ago.
Yeah, those guys are fine. I don't really like Iggy, but
Robert says, because I have a center left to fill in my cash. Do I go with Tucker or Whiteside on FanDuel?
Whiteside.
Kane
especially
says,
on FanDuel, you get more points for blocks and you don't get points for threes.
Yeah. Kane says, Oladipo or Schroeder on FanDuel?
Oladipo.
Iron Maiden, Whiteside, and Butler or Jeff Green and Shea Gilgeous-Alexander?
Whiteside Butler.
Strixine asking if you like Duncan Robinson.
I don't. His price tag's come up. He's like 5,100 on DraftKings. Yeah. He's not closing games. They're closing with Hero over him. You would have to be expecting 34 to 36 minutes from Robinson for me to really get there at that price point, considering all he does is shoot threes. He's not contributing peripherals, and there's just been no sign of him playing fourth quarter minutes.
Just want to try to get through anybody we really haven't mentioned. I don't know have we talked a lot about Bam at all?
Not really. I think he's a decent option here. The problem is that at that price point at other positions, there's plays that look better. But his usage does take a hit with Butler and Dragic dominating the ball so much, but he still does contribute, in all three categories, and it is still a favorable spot for him.
CJ McCollum's, I think, a guy we haven't mentioned at all. I know we talked a lot about Dame. We talked a little bit about Jurkic and Melo and Whiteside, but 7,200 on FanDuel.
Yeah, I actually think McCollum is a pretty decent option here. Just, he's playing the same minutes that Lillard plays basically, but at a, huge discount. And normally Lillard is going to be the guy that takes all the shots, but there's certainly games where McCollum gets, more than his fair share. So, I think it's going to be easier to get McCollum into lineups than it will be to get Lillard, for example.
Another question over in Slack says, do you guys think Muscala and Bazley play more and Noel stays at 16 minutes or so if Adams is out? He doesn't have the foot speed to keep up with anyone.
If Adams is out, I think you get more minutes for Noel than you otherwise would, but I do think Muscala plays, and I think that you just get a lot of small OKC lineups, so you probably get minutes for like one of Diallo or Ferguson or Nader on the wing.
Chris Middleton or Schroeder on FanDuel?
I'd lean toward Schroeder.
Someone says that tonight's going to be the night Gary Trent wakes up.
It's entirely possible. The minutes are pretty concerning.
Yeah. Can he hit the threes? There's going to be opportunities there. I mean, you just watch them. There's opportunities there. Harden with Gallo or AD with Brogdon?
You said Harden with Gallo or AD with Brogdon?
Yeah.
Davis Brogdon.
Someone asked in GPP about the two Magic guards and also Dragic and the guards being Fultz and Augustine.
Yeah, they're all fine.
I don't know. Markelle Fultz to me is just, if he can get to the basket, get some assists, okay. Right now him and Malcolm Brogdon basically have the same ownership at 32%. Gary Clark's ownership is up there at 4,100 on DraftKings. Brook Lopez at 20%. Do you like that one?
It's kind of just neutral to me.
Yeah. When you look at on the FanDuel side of things, Bam is right now coming in at number 2 in terms of ownership.
Power forward over there is really, really bad.
Yeah. If you look at power forward, it's AD, him, and then Jeff Green at 5,500.
Yeah, you're just going to get a lot of Davis, Bam, and Green, and you should.
Someone just saying that the DK $20 NBA contest is about 4,000 short of filling with 4 minutes to lock.
I already have.
Definitely something you got to pay attention to. Some over at SuperDraft, you got to look into those contests as well. You can put yourself in some great situations. Of course, you got to use that promo code Awesemo10 to get $10 free on your first deposit of $10 or more, or $20 total free on your first deposit of $100 or more. Also, today is the last day for the Mamba promo that we have going over at Awesemo.com. Go to Awesemo.com/join to sign up for a Awesemo Plus weekly pass for $824 when you use a promo code Mamba at checkout. That'll get you all the NBA ownership projections, player projections, the boom bust tool, and so much more. So you got to check that out over at Awesemo.com/join. Joshua says Ross or Fournier on DraftKings. To me, it's got to be Ross.
Yeah, for Ross.
I just don't know how you would train there. James Ennis or Jay Crowder on DraftKings on FanDuel, excuse me.
I think they're really, really close.
Do you like a combination of Hero, Robinson, and Butler or a combo with them?
I'm not really on Hero or Robinson.
Any particular reason why you're just not on Tyler Hero?
I just think he's too expensive.
Okay. Of course, we are just about 3 minutes away before lock. We got a 4-game slate today, starting here. As I mentioned, just a couple minutes. We got the Bucks and the Magic. At 4 p.m. Eastern time, we got the Rockets and the Thunder, then Pacers Heat, and then the nightcap, the Lakers and the Blazers. Lakers Blazers, that would definitely be a game that I'm looking forward to sitting back and watching. Someone asked, and we know your thoughts on Tyler Hero. Someone wanted to team up with Chris Paul or go with McCollum and Bledsoe.
McCollum, Bledsoe.
If your last piece is Lopez or Fournier, is it just Lopez?
Yeah.
In terms of Whiteside, the minutes restriction, the minutes is I mean, you mentioned about the blocks on FanDuel, but from a minutes perspective, doesn't that concern you of how many minutes he'll get?
Yeah, but he's also inexpensive. So I mean, my bigger concern is that his rates also go down when he's playing with this group.
Mm-hmm. Thoughts on Melo's ownership today?
What's it at? I don't have it in front of me.
On DraftKings, Carmelo is at where is he? Just have up here a second ago. He is at 11%.
I think that's lower than it should be.
Let's leave on this note. We kind of talked about a little bit earlier of Kuzma and Melo, where you mentioned Melo because of he's just going to have more opportunities.
Yeah, he probably plays 14 minutes more than Kuzma.
Yeah, something definitely. And also, Andre mentions McCollum, pretty much not much ownership going into tonight. I think that's definitely someone you got to sit there and take advantage of. But of course, be sure to take advantage of that Mamba promo we have over at Awesemo.com/join for $8.24. Get you an Awesemo Plus weekly pass for $8.24. So it is time for the first game of the day, Magic and Bucks. Be sure to stay tuned here at Awesemo.com all throughout the day, and we'll be live before lock coming up here later on today. So let's go and wrap it up for the NBA Live Before Lock show right here on Awesemo.com.